Osiris.
We're mass communicating. We're mass communicating. Mass communicating.
Welcome back to Touchdowns All Day. I'm your host, Max Dawson, flying solo this week as BARBER is getting himself ready to head back out on the road and close out summer tour at Thalia Hall in Chicago. I am joined by a very special guest, a good friend of mine, a great friend of the Disco Biscuits community and of Touchdowns All Day, known to some as that Simpsons guy from Shakedown, or simply But Our Cup. This man is a deviant digital mashup artist. His name is Alex Mazer, and I'm sure you will recognize him from either seeing him inside on the dance floor at a Biscuits show, maybe operating one of the cameras for the Nugs live feed, or if you ever have been to a Dead & Company or even a Fish show, outside vending under the moniker of New Springfield Boogie. Alex has managed to find a way to make his art even more niche and alienating, fusing together the timeless comedic sensibility of The Simpsons with the legendary iconography of the Grateful Dead. Rebranding himself under the pithy moniker New Springfield Boogie, the wily scamp has dedicated himself to what he refers to as a medley of American counterculture. Alex is a creative polymath. His other crusades include poetry, musical composition, multimedia video production, and artistry of the meme. You can find him online at newspringfieldboogie.com and at newspringfieldboogie on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And you can also find him at Steal Your Donut on the app formerly known as Twitter, now X. Alex, welcome to Touchdowns All Day.
Thank you so much for having me, Max. That was a beautiful introduction.
I feel like even if you wrote it, it couldn't have been more beautiful and fitting.
Agreed.
Alex, I have so many things I want to ask you about, so many different topics. I was writing all my questions, and by the time I got to the section of questions about the ostensible topic of this podcast, the Disco Biscuits and our culture and community, I realized I had already done an entire interview with you in my head. So we've got lots of ground to cover. I'm going to dive right into it with the most salient and important question, and that is, what is New Springfield Boogie?
New Springfield Boogie is a mashup of The Simpsons and the Grateful Dead, just to put it completely simply. It was my pandemic pivot. So this is a project that I started doing, it'll be 5 years ago this September. And as you mentioned before, I was a shooter for nugs.net. And during the pandemic, there was a lack of live music. So I decided it was probably a wise idea to learn a new skill. And I had the good fortune of living with someone who was a graphic designer. And I decided to learn Photoshop and Illustrator. And anytime I had a question, I had somebody there to give me a little boost. And my first project was putting Simpsons characters' heads on the Grateful Dead bears. And it was a great learning experience. And when I posted it on social media, I had an overwhelming response. So it kind of spiraled from there. And to me, both The Simpsons and the Grateful Dead are massive mainstays of American counterculture. So I figured I couldn't be the only person in the center of that Venn diagram. And luckily, I was right.
It is truly like a peanut butter and chocolate combination. And something that I'm sure you weren't the first to do, although you were the first to do with a real sense of style and purpose, as opposed to just the sort of bootleg Bart Simpson t-shirt of the 90s cheap cash-in mentality. I'm sure there were, and there are probably online repositories where we could answer this conclusively, Grateful Dead lot shirts in the 80s and 90s that incorporated totally. Bart Simpson don't have a cowman or cowabunga or something like that.
There's definitely like a 90s lot shirt that has Bart on it, and it's just a complete ripoff of the I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you shirt, but it says, I hope they play Darkstar, or do you think they'll play Darkstar Man or something like that? But yeah, that was like a 1991, 1992 shirt. And sometimes people will bring it to me to show it to me. So I've seen the relics.
It's really an interesting combination for many reasons. You know, as you say, both iconic expressions of the counterculture, albeit in very different contexts, coming from very different backgrounds.
I guess I should also say what was once counterculture, because both of them are pretty mainstream at this point. But, you know, at the height of when they were as cool as can be, I think you could call them both counterculture.
That's what I was going to say. Two things that started out truly countercultural. Of course, Matt Groening and The Simpsons starting out in alt weeklies, you know, and obviously the Tracy Ullman shorts, a show that was so controversial at its start, but now has become, you know, a Disney property essentially.
Right.
And the Grateful Dead, likewise, a band at one point thought to be this degenerate influence on America's youth through spreading the gospel of LSD and free love. And of course, today, now one of the most revered cultural institutions. And you have Bobby at Bohemian Grove convening with the 1% and the Sphere becoming essentially like one of the biggest cultural phenomena of 2024.
Right.
So
and I think some people are upset because they see it as elitist at this point. But, you know, things are constantly evolving and changing, and they want to push that envelope. And the Sphere's, I mean, have you been to the Sphere yet, Max?
I have not.
You gotta go. It's really a sight to behold. It's definitely like a monument to hubris, but like, my God. And I hear it's a financial disaster.
Yes.
But like, just being in that building it's so overwhelming in the best way.
Sometimes the hubris of the pharaoh ends up benefiting all of the peasants. And this is one of those instances. It also could very conceivably be some sort of tax write-off, but who knows? I am shocked to find out, Alex, that you took up Photoshop during COVID, because looking at your work, one of the things that makes it stand out is how seamlessly you integrate the two sets of iconography. I'm looking in, you know, a picture of Mr. Burns in front of the wall of sound. And it's not simply that you've got a great image of Mr. Burns operating a control panel, but that you've re-rendered the wall of sound images in the style of The Simpsons. How did what was the learning curve like of you picking up this new set of tools and applying it to this very specific set of visual references?
They're both Adobe programs, and they're layer-based programs. So I think the biggest learning curve, if you're not used to using layer-based programs, is understanding that everything you do should be on a separate layer. And that's the biggest learning curve, because you're clicking around and you're wondering, like, why isn't this working? Like, why can't I draw here? Why am I drawing elsewhere? Why is this above this? Like, once you fully understand like what the layers mean, and I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but every single, like, if I were to like draw a face and color it in yellow, I would do like the outline on one layer, I would do the fill in on another layer, and then I would, on a third layer, I might do some shading. So they're each their own layer. And once you get that, you get it. And just like anything else, you're just exercising your brain, you're just learning a new skill, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I had the benefit of enjoying it, which makes me want to do it more, which makes it easier to learn and get better at faster. Like, I'm sitting there laughing my ass off when I'm making this stuff.
That's the dream. That is the dream. Art is something that you enjoy not only making, but also being a consumer of. What I want to know, though, is I'm finding it hard to believe that you came in so novice and green. Did you have some sort of background in drawing or visual arts?
Oh, yeah. No, I've always been very into art. I've always drawn. I was taking cartooning classes in elementary school, so I've always drawn. So I did have that advantage. And I've always been into collage too. I've been very, very into collage art ever since I was a young child too. Like, the walls of my childhood bedroom were covered from floor to ceiling in just one giant collage. I'd keep my parents up late at night and I'd staple it into the wall, which they protested at first, but then, you know, once the wall was full of staples, there's no going back.
Yes. Now, with starting out with New Springfield Boogie, were there any people out there, artists, lot artists in particular, who were inspirations for you?
That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that. There's definitely artists whose art I like, but I don't know that I drew on inspiration from it. There's definitely a lot of, well, I'll use the phrase meme lords out there
Okay.
who are just making just, not mashup, just Grateful Dead memes and just any meme in general. Like when you're working with memes, it's a very bandwagon thing. So if there is a meme that's trending, it behooves you as a content creator to kind of like jump on that trending meme, because then whether it's from a hashtag or whatever, more people are going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's meme templates that everybody knows and is familiar with, and you can just kind of take them and make them your own. Like, the Drake one where he's like going like that or going like that, or you've seen them all.
Of course. Were there any specific Grateful Dead or jam music related meme accounts that you were particularly impressed by and thought, I want to be in conversation, I want to be a part of this creative community?
I think Fat Albert is awesome. She's great.
Yeah. She is really great.
She's
always
very, very funny. Yeah, she always brings it, and she has a unique brand of humor too. Heady.net's very funny. The Unce is very funny. I hope I'm not leaving. I'm sure I'm leaving many of them out, but
please don't be offended. I'm putting Alex on the spot. We probably follow you already. A Necessary Act I always find is great. There are so many. We love our memes.
Right. And the more niche ones, the more you feel like you're on an inside joke. Like I follow I follow like Star Trek meme accounts, Lord of the Rings meme accounts.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the beauties of being a part of a modern fandom, is that not only can you appreciate things completely earnestly and on the level in which they are perhaps intended to be consumed, but you can also lovingly make fun of them. And there is that strong, prankster element within Grateful Dead culture that lends itself to making a meme of Bobby in his short shorts, or of Jerry would have loved, or there's just so many great ways to take the inspiration that the Grateful Dead and other jam bands have given us and to re-express it in a contemporary context that's much more geared typically toward a very different, more ephemeral type of contemporary popular culture. And Drake.
I think that playfulness that you've brought up with the pranksters works hand in hand with the playfulness of The Simpsons.
Definitely.
And if it doesn't, I'll make sure that it does.
So you said that your first stab at this was putting Simpsons heads on the Dancing Bears bodies. Mm-hmm. So you did that. You put it online. You got a good response from it. At some point, however, this goes from just Alex teaching himself Photoshop to Alex creating a brand. How did that transition unfold?
Right off the bat, people were asking for merch from that first image. People were like, you should make t-shirts, you should make stickers. And I didn't have those aspirations at that moment, but I did, there were definitely some dollar signs in my eyes. I won't lie to you about that. But I think it took a little while for me to get from just designs to memes, because I can see the analytics, and with a design, even if it's a funny design, like if it's, the Grateful Dead Terrapin with Hans Moleman's head on it, it's visual, it's a sight gag, but there's no joke beyond that really. And something like that might get a lot of likes, but it's not going to get a lot of shares. And what shares is really what you want. And I began to realize that if I did bake a joke into it, I got way more shares, hence turning it from just designs into a meme account. So that's why that happened. And then with merch, it just got to a point where it was silly that I wasn't doing any merch, because people kept asking. They're like, just take my money, put this on a t-shirt. So and I had no experience. I didn't know how to do that. So I had to kind of figure that out. And then when you're figuring out all the administrative stuff, you're not doing the art. So I was reluctant to do anything else besides the art, because the art was all I really wanted to do. I don't want to run a business, but I love that this is my livelihood, and I can make a living off of this, which is crazy. Like I pulled it out of my ass, I'm making a living off of it. It's crazy.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask you, in addition to being the designer and chief creative officer of this endeavor, you're also the shipping department, the customer service department, the
marketing department, the sales department.
You are a one-person business.
Yeah.
For some people, the easiest way to ruin a labor of love is to turn it into a job, which really is, it can fast track you to the destination of dissatisfaction and resentment towards something that used to be a source of joy and creativity.
100%.
How have you navigated that?
Because I take joy in the other parts of it. And I didn't know that about myself until I showed up on lot and realized that I had a gift for the in-person sales portion, because I treat it like performance art. There was an article that came out about the final tour last summer, and I'm blanking on the name of the writer, but the writer compared me to the character Lyle Landley, like the monorail salesman in The Simpsons. He also, in the same sentence, compared me to some other artist I was very, very excited to be compared to, but I'm blanking.
Keith Haring?
Yes, yeah. So you know the article, yes.
I know the article, and I also know about Keith Haring's background selling bootleg t-shirts on Grateful Dead tour.
Right. The bootleg t-shirt scene is so rich. It's so much fun, and being on lot and spending time with other vendors who take as much joy in what they're doing as I do is such a treat. That was one of my favorite parts about this past summer at the Sphere, which I can't believe it's over, was getting to know my fellow lot vendors.
Yes, it's interesting to take that traveling carnival shakedown environment, which is very much geared toward being able to pop up and break down instantaneously, and sometimes have to deal with more or less scrutiny from law enforcement, with venue security, et cetera, and bringing it into a marketplace, putting everyone in one environment. It's like when, very much like in Vegas, when you set up your residency, there is a performance element to vending. You are involved in not just a financial transaction, but you're attempting to get people's attention as well. And it's really interesting knowing you and knowing your love of play and performance, thinking of you re-envisioning the act of selling your merchandise as part of the creative process.
And it is. And I think that's been super beneficial for me, because once I realized I was doing that, I became even more of a caricature of myself while doing it. And it's really fun. And the interactions that I have with people really, really make it worthwhile. I have families come up to me and tell me they're new Springfield Boogie fans, and that's the coolest thing ever. A multi-generational Deadhead Simpsons loving family. I get to talk to them. It's so rewarding.
So did you start out by selling on the lot and then migrate to having an online business as well?
No, the other way around. I just started printing stickers because it was really the easiest thing to do, and also they're easy to ship. It's just an envelope and a stamp. Mm-hmm. Another thing is I can offer free shipping on stickers because people, sales psychology, like people like free shipping. And also I would feel kind of like a scumbag charging shipping for a sticker. But I started doing stickers, and then I moved to pins, and then eventually, at the behest of many, many DMs, I started doing t-shirts. And that was more of a to-do.
And when did you first go on the road with New Springfield Boogie?
I first went on the road 2 summers ago. I was in LA visiting my in-laws, and Dead & Company was at Dodger Stadium, and I was going to be in LA anyway. And I just went and got a table at Walmart and set it up in the lot, just had a shoebox full of stickers, and I cleaned up. And so I decided then and there, I'm going to finish out this tour.
Wow.
So I did, the last 5 or 6 shows of that tour. And then last summer I did From Chicago On. So I think I did like between 16 and 19 shows. And then for the Sphere residency, I did every single one. So I did all 30 shows.
So in stitching together the iconography of the dead and the Simpsons, you're threading the needle between two of the most valuable bodies of intellectual property the world has ever known.
And not just that, they have massive fan culture surrounding them too.
Massive fan cultures, but also massive legal might.
Yes.
And histories of enforcement of their intellectual property protections. Mm-hmm. What I'd like to know is, have you had any interaction with the rights holders of either? And have you ever run into any trouble with what you do?
So Matt Groening himself is very famously bootleg neutral. He can be seen wearing bootleg Simpsons merchandise. I think he's very amused by the whole thing. And he seems like a very down-to-earth, like, I have what I need kind of a guy. Which is funny because it's very similar to the ethos of the Grateful Dead, letting people bootleg their music. You know, people are like, well, how can you let people bootleg your music? Well, it's so that it's more widespread. That's our model. And I don't know that bootleg Simpsons merchandise led to more people being aware of the Simpsons, but it didn't hurt, I'm sure. It also made bootleg Simpsons shirts very popular. I met Matt Groening 7 or 8 years ago. It was before I had started doing New Springfield Boogie. I'd love to let him know about it. But he was just the nicest, most present, down-to-earth guy. I was at a lecture given by the Pee-wee's Playhouse creative team at USC, and he was just an audience member. So Lizzie and I, after the lecture, we like kind of turn around and see him there, and we went up to him. We're like, we couldn't help but notice that you're Matt Groening. And he's, oh, are you fans? So we talked to him for like 20 or 30 minutes, and he voluntarily drew us cartoons. So I have a Homer that says, yellow Alex, your pal Matt, and Lizzie's got a Bart that says, eat my shorts, Lizzie.
That's great.
They're obviously framed. I have spoken to some IP attorneys, to get back to your original question, and some of them have told me that some of it's protected under parody, free speech. There are certain images in the Grateful Dead iconography that are restricted, and there are some that are public domain. Like, for instance, the Steely itself is public domain, but it's the bolt that's copyrighted.
Wow.
So when I've used the bolt, I've tried to obscure it or cover up some of the points so that not all 13 are showing.
I'm noticing this now. I have newspringfieldboogie.com open in front of me. And if you guys haven't been here, it's not only a great place to buy your merch, but also a gallery of Alex's work. And I'm seeing Lisa in a lightning bolt costume where it's sort of a little obscured at the bottom so that it's not 13 points, and other instances where there's just enough to obscure things. So very good work there.
Thank you. 2 years ago in Pittsburgh, I was vending on the lot, and Dead & Company's manager at the time, Matt Bush, was walking in my direction, and I was kind of just going like that, hiding my face. And then he walked right up to me, and I was like, oh, it's curtains for me. Like, New Springfield Boogie's done. And he goes, New Springfield Boogie? And I said, yes. And he said, I came here looking for you. I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm a huge fan. Oh. And so I just gave him a bunch of stickers. He was the nicest guy. So, GD Productions, I assume, is aware of me, but I'm also not regurgitating just like the same iconography and just slapping it on a shirt. I'm doing something that's very different that, in my eyes, isn't really in competition with them.
Yes.
I would say.
And there's very clearly an element of loving celebration in all of the work that you do.
Yes.
I'm
even when I'm making fun, and no one is safe. Like, I'll make fun of everybody, but you can't take yourself seriously. And I think that, at least I hope that these types of people know that. And
I'm scrolling through the archives. I see that not only do we have, obviously, Simpsons and Grateful Dead represented. I see Storm from the X-Men. I know you are a big X-Men 97 fan. I see, what else do I see here? I saw
that one didn't land, like sometimes
Really?
I deviate. Yeah. Sometimes because I really, truly do believe that you need to make your art for yourself. And I know I'm on record saying that multiple times, but it's the truth. Like if you like it, odds are someone else is going to like it. And if you like it, it's authentic. Like
I love
the Dollywood shirt that I did, or as I call it,
that was where
Jurassic
I was going.
Parton. That one made a big splash. And the only reason I even made that is just because I was going to Dollywood and I wanted to make it for me. I was sitting on the couch thinking about how Dollywood is an amusement park, just like Jurassic Park, that I was thinking about dinosaurs. I thought about the dinosaur from the cover of Jerry Garcia's Run for the Roses album. And I was like, I got to get up off the couch right now, because if I don't, I'll never make this. And this is really funny. And I made it, and I went to Dollywood. And that morning, I was like, can I post this on New Springfield Boogie? This is against the rules. Like, I can't deviate. And then I realized and remembered that I was the one who makes the rules. So I did. And at that time, that was the most units of one design I'd ever sold in one morning. And then Jay Lane wore it on stage. It's made a big splash. And I finally got to thank Jay Lane for that, because I saw him recently and I said, I made the Jurassic Parton shirt. I really want to thank you for wearing it. My online sales went bananas the day after you wore it. So thank you for being an influencer marketer. And he just looked at me and goes, it's the weirdest shirt I've ever seen in my life.
It truly is. And I remember, if I recall correctly, you made it for yourself, right? You literally made it to wear to Dollywood.
Yeah.
The triple stacked memes, the I Know You Rider, but what am I, with Jerry and Pee Wee Herman singing, but with a Simpsons font. No matter what pop culture influences you incorporate, X-Men, Pee Wee, Dolly, you put it through that lens of the Simpsons, and then you mash it up with the Grateful Dead, and it ends up becoming its own thing. It ends up becoming New Springfield Boogie.
Thank you. That's how I feel. It's nice to hear someone else say it.
Well, there's a sensibility, you know what I mean? Like on the surface, again, what does Pee Wee have to do with the Grateful Dead?
Nothing.
Other than the fact that a lot of weird kids growing up in the 80s and 90s were watching Pee Wee. And then a few years later, they were at Jewish summer camp and they saw someone with a Grateful Dead t-shirt. And these things just had a natural way of flowing from one to another to another. I want to talk a little bit about how you did eventually get tuned into the Grateful Dead, but I wanted to know first, before we got there, getting all the business stuff out of the way up front. For anyone who's looking to take inspiration from this podcast on how to start your own meme empire, you mentioned that Jay Lane sent sales of Jurassic Parton through the roof. Yeah. Do you have a sense of what your biggest seller of all time has been?
Yeah, that one. Which is in big part thanks to Jay Lane, I would say. But also, it's just that design is off the wall. People love Dolly Parton, and whenever anyone walks by that shirt that's from Tennessee, they buy it. Like it's amazing. Any person from Tennessee has not been able to walk by that shirt and resist buying it. She's also a cultural icon. She's amazing. And whether you get the Jerry Garcia band reference, and also Jurassic Park is iconic as can possibly be. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't get the Jerry Garcia band reference, which I imagine that, that's the most obscure of all of them, it's still just a wild, weird shirt. It's a conversation starter. I'm proud of that one.
Well, that was my follow-up. It might not be your biggest seller, but what is the design you are most proud of?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's a lot that I really love. The Homer in and out of the garden he goes. This one, yes. Just for those who are just listening and not watching, it's Homer going into the bushes. It's very memed. Homer just disappearing into the bushes, which is from the Homer, with the episode where Homer and Flanders are best friends. When I made that one, I knew that was a big time winner, just because even if you aren't a Simpsons person, you've seen the meme of Homer. So that one is very, very accessible. So I'm proud of that one. I also have one that is a triple mashup. It's a Watchmen, Simpsons, and Grateful Dead mashup. I call that one Blue Moon.
Yes.
And that one I think just visually looks really, really cool. And not a lot of people get that one, but when somebody does, it, their head explodes.
That is a good one. And the Homer in and out of the garden, I think was the first that I've ever seen put on a pair of pants.
Yeah.
The pants themselves almost became a meme.
Yeah. No, they definitely
did. Now, did you create those for yourself at first, or how did that? Because I believe those were the article of merchandise that you created that someone once found and said, "Hey, Alex, I think you would really like these."
Yes, and that became a meme. No, I just decided to experiment with pants because I make shirts, and joggers are comfortable. People like them, and you can do sublimation printing on a jogger. So you can do these, very colorful, intricate designs. And I just kind of wanted to see how it would look. So I designed it and ordered myself a pair, and I wore it around myself before I put it on the website. But, going back to influencer marketing, at the Sacred Rose Festival, Barber walked out on stage wearing them, and that was the best possible place he could have done that because there were so many photographers there, including Jay Blakesberg. So that was the next day, I got a lot of orders, and many people wrote in the memo, "I saw the guy from the Disco Biscuits wearing these."
No better way to sell pants than to have Barber wear them. We know that now. That is the lesson. That is the takeaway.
Yep.
Well, Alex, let's wind back and talk a little bit about how you got where you are. You mentioned as a child your love of cartooning and collage and the staples in the wall. Fill us in a little bit about your background, your upbringing, where you grew up, and what sort of things you found yourself doing as a kid.
I grew up in a suburb of Washington, D.C., Rockville, Maryland, North Bethesda area. And I was definitely an indoor kid. I was like very not into sports, not into any of the sports where people were depending on me. I liked to swim. I like to ski, but team sports, I didn't have the stomach for it. And so I was very, very into art. And my mother was an art teacher also. So I was very, very into drawing, collage. I played classical trumpet as a child. I self-taught piano. Most of my family's musicians too. My dad plays the clarinet and the piano, and my mom has a beautiful singing voice, and she plays the piano too. My younger sibling sings in a band and plays the banjo and the guitar. So they're also very, very eclectic musically. Like my dad is very into opera. He's a music snob. He's just into classical and opera. My mom likes more like of the rock and roll. And that is reflected in my musical taste as well. Like I love musical theater. I like classical music. I love rock and roll, jam band music. And I came across the Grateful Dead at summer camp. I guess like in 1993, a lot of my camp counselors were listening to the Dead, who were still touring at the time. And even some of our camp songs, because the directors were Deadheads. So that was my first introduction. And I had older cousins that were also into the Dead. So I was aware of it at a young age. But my musical journey, as many teens and preteens are into, I got angsty and anti-authoritarian and got very into punk music and I played in a ska band, I played in a punk band, and eventually found my way back to the Dead via classic rock, I guess. And I saw the Dead for the first time when they were the Dead in June of 2003. That was a heady summer for me. I saw the Dead in June. I saw my first Fish show the next month in July, and then I saw my first Biscuit show the next month in August.
Wow. Year zero for New Springfield Boogie.
The summer of 2003.
I want to know though, what was the DC punk scene like during your formative teenage years? Because
Vibrant.
DC punk it's one of the original locations of so much in not only the punk but just the general DIY movement.
Yeah, and I was ingrained in that. The Bad Brains. I was friends with HR's goddaughter. My band opened for Fugazi at Fort Reno many, many years ago. There were not just my band, lots of different bands, but I was pretty young at the time too. I was like 16 or 17, and I was pretty starstruck. Most of the guys that I was in bands with in middle school and high school are still playing, and they're all the band I played with the longest was called the Max Levine Ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
And they still play. In fact, they're playing at 930 Club in November.
Wow.
Yeah, they're a 3-piece now though. We used to be a 5-piece. I haven't played with them in many, many years.
Well, maybe you need to sit in, bring out the ukulele.
Yeah.
So in the last few years, it's become abundantly clear that this trajectory from punk rock DIY culture to Grateful Dead culture is not unusual.
No, I don't think so at all.
And, I think lot artists have really been some of the most noteworthy examples of that. So I'm thinking specifically of Jeremy Dean from Dean's Nuts and Wonders of Black Flag, which was one of the first kind of pop culture mashup Grateful Dead meme accounts that I became aware of and started coveting t-shirts from.
Yeah, but the Wonders of Black Flag one is iconic.
Yeah. Elijah and Alex from Online Ceramics were both punks and came to jam band and Grateful Dead culture through that route. What is it about the DIY zine punk scene of creating your own culture, starting your own band, and the jam band world where so many of the participants are not simply consumers of the culture, but actively creating their own versions, their own mashups and reinterpretations, their own merch, their own music? What do you see about these two worlds that allows them to, apart from this desire to become involved and to create, that has allowed them to kind of have this strange relationship between the punks and the hippies?
I think that the most simple answer is just that they're both counterculture. And I think that it's so relatable for somebody to feel like they don't belong, and then they find this sense of community in that they find within these musical scenes, and it becomes their identity. All of their friends like that same type of music. They all start to dress in a similar way, and then it's your tribe.
So, as we were talking earlier about how Grateful Dead and Simpsons have gone from countercultural roots to mass cultural reach over the course of many, many decades, there's this interesting similar trajectory that's gone on with lot art and merch in the last few years in particular that you've been a part of. You've definitely rode that wave. There's obviously been lot merch for as long as there's been lot. We talked about Keith Haring trying to finance his trip out west in, I think it was like 79 or 80 or something. Maybe it was 77, 78 even, by drawing up some bootleg shirts. And Dead & Company has somehow become the catalyst for this incredible flourishing of vernacular creativity and small businesses that have sprung up around creating and vending. So, you had Mayer's patronage of Dean's Nuts and Online Ceramics, and then Always Play Dead came around, and lot artists were getting official licensing deals and write-ups in the New York Times and GQ and Mr. Mort. And then you started seeing NBA basketball players sporting the most beautiful, outrageous Grateful Dead merch.
Yeah, LeBron wore the Market Grateful Dead collab.
Yeah.
It was called Chinatown Market at the time. Now it's just Market.
What's it been like to have been a participant in this process I mean, did that momentum already feel like it was a thing when you started out, or did you feel it kind of push you and lift you from behind as you started to become more and more involved in the culture?
I think being involved, it's hard not to notice. I think that post-pandemic, people were really ready to get back out there. And I think that a lot of people, like myself, took advantage of that quiet reflection time during the pandemic. I had the time, I used the time, I learned new skills. And when the pandemic was over, I was excited to get out there and see music. I was rejuvenated. And I felt that from everybody else around me too. And I think that there was, some sort of like a creative revolution happening. And like you said before, there was plenty of people already doing this, but I think you see a lot more of it happening. I think that the lot is a lot more vibrant, and there's way more vendors than I ever remember seeing. And also people have brands now. It used to be just, you'd see the same shirts. Like it would be like the Mountain Dew Morning Dew one. But now people have actual brands. And I think that vending a lot in a time of social media has a big part of that.
It's very interesting to see the emergence of these personal brands. Most of the people who Online Ceramics,
right?
Dean's Nuts,
Online Ceramics is Blues for Sala is great. I love that guy. Online Ceramics, like people go to lot looking for them.
Oh,
there's a line. And I think some of the older vendors don't understand how that's happening for them. And they'll say, "Hey, can we supply your shirts? Like, will you sell to us wholesale and we'll have them?" And they're like, "No, that's not how we do this."
It's very interesting. You end up following these people in their creativity. You become a fan of them in addition to a fan of the Dead or whatever band that they're creating merch for. So it's definitely interesting to see the emergence of these brands. One thing though, however, that I will point out is that this world has been rocked recently by some scandal. Allegations surfaced about inappropriate sexual behavior and sexual assault by some of the leading lot artists. I noticed that you were one of the first people to come out and make a very strongly worded statement in support of the victims and survivors. And since then, I feel like there has been a little more scrutiny over not only this kind of gray market, but also the culture of online celebrity that can sometimes spring up around these micro influencers within a scene, and how people can use that influence to uplift the creativity of their friends or people just getting started out. But sometimes people have used that in exploitative ways.
Yeah. And we can name names here. I know you're talking about Holy Moly Mischief. And I think it's important to name names. His name was Tony. And that was a big blow to the community. What was weird to me is that after it happened, there were people that came out of the woodwork and said, "I always knew there was something wrong with that guy." And I was thinking kind of like, then why wouldn't you have said something if you knew there was something wrong about that guy? Because I didn't know. I thought he seemed like a nice guy. He was always nice to me. He did a lot of charity work. He did community building. And I wasn't even one of the people, I wasn't even one of the victims, and I felt betrayed. And so I can only imagine how people actually victimized by him must feel. It was really, really disturbing. And the scene, and it was a heavy burden on the scene right after it happened. But what was very cool is that, the band was made aware of it. He was officially banned from Shakedown, and the first two songs they played, the weekend everyone came back were "Women Are Smarter" and "He's Gone."
I was going to ask, how did that impact the general atmosphere in Las Vegas at a time when everyone was coming together for a really celebratory moment, and a moment that, I don't know, we all can be somewhat skeptical about these announcements of final shows and final tours, but at the same time, no one took for granted that there was going to be this multi-week, multi-month residency. So it's a time when everyone is really happy, reunions, seeing people you haven't seen since last tour, and this goes down. Did that in any way, apart from the initial disruption, cast a shadow over the rest of the season, or do you feel
Not
like
the
the
rest of the
community has
season at all.
rebounded?
I wouldn't say it cast a shadow, and I'm sure that it cast a shadow much more significantly for people that were directly affected.
Yeah.
The weekend we all came back after everything went down, it felt off, I guess I'll say. And there were a lot of people that really didn't know what to do or how to act. And Groove Safe, I think, and if you don't know, Groove Safe is an organization that makes sure that people feel safe to groove. And I think they made a statement, and they said a lot of good things, and just tried to foster an environment in which people felt more comfortable, which is what they were doing before. But I think people were looking to them more after this happened, and they were up to that. For me, I don't know. I was just kind of like in shock, I guess. I couldn't, like, I had jokes that I wanted to make that on my account. Like, I had memes that I wanted to post, and I didn't feel like it was the time to be making jokes until I addressed it. And
yeah,
that morning, the voice actor for the Latin American Simpsons had died, and I posted something about that, which led to a little bit of confusion. But somebody sent me a DM, and they were like, I don't really care that this person died. I want to know like what your thoughts are. And I was like, well, you know what? Right now I am marinating on what my thoughts are, but I think I know exactly what they are. So thanks for saying something. Thanks for giving me a little push. I'm going to make a statement right now. And I did. And Fish on Film did before me, like I was not the first to do it. I was one of the first. Fish on Film certainly. And there was a whole Reddit thread about it. With people coming forward. I think there were like 70 women or something. It was crazy. But I said what I needed to say. I made my statement, and then I kind of moved on because I wasn't really trying to dwell on it. I think it's important to have a certain reverence for it, but we also, we're there for another reason. We have to, sally forth.
The Sphere obviously represents a completely new paradigm, not only in the Grateful Dead organization's touring history, but also obviously in this impromptu online and in-person marketplace that has sprung up around it. What was your experience like of the residency? I know you were going back and forth. I know you were getting into some of the shows. Tell me about your overall experience of your residency in Las Vegas.
Well, I had this sort of miraculous situation happen where at the Gem and Jam in Tucson, I met this guy who had an apartment in Las Vegas. And I said, oh, I'm going to be there a lot this summer. And he said, you need a place to crash? And I said, well, it's 10 weekends. He goes, come stay with me. And
wow.
So I said, why don't I come one weekend? We'll see how it goes. I stayed with him one weekend. Great dude. And then he got a job in Columbus, Ohio, and moved to Ohio. And I had my own apartment. I had an empty apartment in Las Vegas for no reason. It was cosmic. So that was very, very convenient. That my room and board was subsidized. Beyond that, I loved it. I only enjoyed it more as the weeks went on, and I learned a lot. I had new products. I was able to do some artwork in between. It's a lot because it's like a 10.5-hour drive to go from Taos, where I live, Taos, New Mexico, to Las Vegas. And I would do it all in one sitting. I would leave like early Wednesday morning. I would get to Las Vegas Wednesday afternoon. I would set up and I would go to sleep. And then I would wake up Thursday morning and vend. I'd get there at 10:30, stay there till 6. And the nice thing about it being in a casino is that there was security, so we could just set up once and not have to break down, which is huge.
Oh, wow.
Because that's a big that's a big deal, not having to get there early and scramble to find a spot. There was assigned spots, which was also really nice. That was Jay Lee were the ones who organized it. They told you where you were, so no one was fighting. And when I was ready to be done, I just, I put some of the things away, put them under the table, and just walked away. There was no breakdown. It was marvelous. And sometimes, more often than not, I was able to get a miracle to the show. And that was very, very cool. The first weekend, like, people were giving them out like hotcakes. Like, the first weekend I was there, when Shakedown was outside, mind you, in the hot Vegas sun in May.
Oh, wow.
I got like 5 miracles the first night, and I was just handing them out to friends.
Whoa.
But as word got out and as the residency progressed, it became more challenging to get tickets. I made it into like 17 or 18 shows though.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what's your review?
My review is that the Let It Grow from, I think it was the 24th, was my favorite part of the entire residency. Yeah, I said it that night, and I in my Instagram story, I was like, that was the best thing I've seen this whole residency. But, there's the recency bias, as we discuss on Touchdowns All Day.
Yes.
But I don't re-listen to a lot of Dead and Company, really. If I'm putting on the Dead, I'm like putting on the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
That's just my personal comfort music. That's not a dig. But the Let It Grow, and I think it was the only Let It Grow of the residency, it sent me. It was good. It was good. Like, Jay Lane, he wanted to play dance beats during that song, and he went for it. He started playing fast, and they just went nuts. It was creative. It was exploratory. It was psychedelic. It was raging, and I have a close personal relationship with Let It Grow. I just love that song in general, which I'm sure also adds to how I feel. But man, when it ended, it was such a triumph. It was so good. I love that. So that was my highlight. I don't even have a highlight number 2. That was my favorite part of the whole residency.
Let's change gears and talk about the reason we're here, the Disco Biscuits. What's the history of your involvement with the Disco Biscuits? When did you first cross paths? You mentioned 2003 was your first show, but...
August 9th, 2003 at the Waterloo Festival in Stanhope, New Jersey. It was Medeski, Martin and Wood, Flaming Lips, Disco Biscuits, String Cheese Incident, and probably some other bands that I'm not remembering. And I just talked about this on Cam Hurt's podcast, The Best Show Ever. And I was actually fact-checked because in my memory... I was sitting on a police car, smoking a bowl or eating mushrooms or whatever it was we were doing at the time. But in fact, I was told by 2 of my friends after the podcast that it was an ambulance we were sitting on.
Oh, okay.
I don't want anyone to call me a liar. I misremembered. It's been over 20 years. So I knew it has
a siren and a flashing red light.
Yeah, yes. So we ate a bunch of mushrooms and I sat on an ambulance and watched a good portion of the Disco Biscuit show, and I had never seen them. I was not unaware of them. I was aware of them because of my college friend Dave Marmon, and he was aware of them because Deb Brownstein used to babysit him when he was a kid.
I had no idea.
Yep.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
Such a small world.
So he used to go see them in New York, or he did like a few times when he was in high school. And then he and I were very good friends freshman year. And he was like, you got to see this band. Like, let's, we'll go check them out. And so we saw them at Waterloo. And I don't know if I was hooked right away, but it was definitely like nothing I had ever seen before. And I'm very, very drawn to bands that are able to create their own unique sound. I love any band that when you turn on that band, right away who you're listening to.
Yes.
And the Disco Biscuits, they not only have they done that, the other jam bands have sections of their shows that people can say was Disco Biscuity because they've left that mark on this. They have their own distinct sound that people use it to describe a segment that another band might play.
Yes.
And that's special. I love that.
Now, you said it didn't necessarily hook you right away, but do you remember the moment when you got it?
Yeah, because I went home and just started listening to them after that. And I got hooked on my own at home. And there were a bunch of shows. Actually, the Drum Off in Atlantic City, which was, where Alan first played. That night, I knew I was going to be a lifelong fan.
Really?
Yeah, and I went to Camp 4 in Van Etten, and I had the best time there also. The New Deal also was a highlight of that festival.
So you came in with some friends, with Dave, some of your other college friends. I see you as someone who, if I meet someone, odds are they know you. You seem to be someone who knows a lot of people. You're a connector. Did you find it easy to become integrated within the Disco Biscuits community?
Not at first. At first, I was just very into hanging out with the people that I came with. When you start being a part of a new scene, you have your crew, and you certainly meet plenty of people, but you have the people that you want to spend time with, particularly if they're already like close friends. But you can't go to these shows and not see the same people over and over again. And when you see the same people over and over again, they're your friends. There's people that I didn't even know their last names, and I would give them hugs when I saw them, and I was excited to see them because we had this overlapping interest. We were impassioned by this music.
Now, you're someone who occupies multiple scenes. Do you find that to be the case in the Dead and Company scene, in the Fish scene? I don't have as much experience in those worlds. I've dabbled in them, but I've always felt a unique sense of camaraderie and community within the Biscuits world, where I found my particular tribe of lunatics. Not that I didn't see some of that in the Dead scene or in the Fish scene, but when I found the Biscuits people, I felt like I had found my people. And I'm wondering if you feel there's something unique within this community that's
in our DNA. Like, you either get it or you don't. With the Jerry Garcia line about black licorice. Yeah. You get it or you don't. And maybe you can get it over time. There's people that are converts, whether it's the Grateful Dead or the Disco Biscuits, but I think I knew pretty right away that it was, I didn't say I was hooked right away, but I knew right away that it was something I wanted to pursue.
Yes.
And then I became a student of it.
Yes. Well, in the lead up to today's episode, we talked about some of the Biscuits performances that have been the most meaningful to you. And at your instruction, I pulled a few clips.
Well, Max, I love that you asked me this because I wasn't ready to do that at all. And you sent me on a trip down memory lane that I have really, really enjoyed.
That's great. Well, that is the purpose of Touchdowns All Day, is to encourage people to listen to more Disco Biscuits. And I definitely have done the same because I've been listening to some of the jams you've been talking about. Do you have a sense of what you'd like to discuss? I have pulled two of your favorites. I've pulled the November 19th, 2006 performance from the Fox Theater in Boulder. And it is specifically a segment of the Cyclone into Inverted Waves.
Yeah.
And then I have also pulled from later that year, December 30th at the Electric Factory, the show ending Spray Paint.
So good.
Do one of those call to you right now?
Well, what I will say is that I feel like this particular era, like 05, 06, 07, isn't... I feel like it's kind of like an unsung era. People are very, very into 09 or 99. But I would just like to say, I would like to laud 2006, 2005, 2007, because there are a lot of gems. And my 2006 was my senior year of college, and I only had class 2 days a week my final semester. And I went to school in Washington, D.C., and because I had class 2 days a week and they were right in the middle of the week, it was and because the Biscuits were playing predominantly on the East Coast, I could really go see them quite a bit and still mostly get the few responsibilities that I had done.
Yes.
And so
you still technically graduated.
In 2006, I saw them 42 times in 2006. So that was almost every weekend. And so, and also this was the era of burned CDs.
Yes.
In the digital era, you listen to a show and you think that was awesome, but you might not listen to it again. In 2006, I had the CDs that I had. So I'd listen to the same shows over and over again. And I listened to them on the drive there and on the drive back. And I spent a lot of time in the car. So I really was a student of that particular era. And there are some honorable mentions that I just want to, we don't have to delve into them, but I would be remiss not to bring them up. The first set of 52705, which was at the Sonar Lounge in beautiful Baltimore, Maryland. The first set is just brilliant. There's a pic, and it's the first inverted morph also, and it was the only inverted morph for years after that. There's a Pygmy inverted morph Spaga segment that's absolutely terrific, and before that is a fiddler that is maybe even my favorite fiddler ever. I think it's pretty perfect. It's not long. It just nails it. And that inverted morph is poetry. It's wonderful. Another one I want to mention, 62206 in Asbury Park. There's a fantastic dribble balloon segment. Just go listen to it. It will speak for itself. The first night of Camp Bisco 5, August 25th, 2006. I think it was the first inverted abyss. I'm not 100% certain. Someone's going to have to fact check me on that. But the inverted abyss into spray paint is really divine.
I can confirm it was the first inverted abyss. Thank you, Biscuits Internet Project.
Hell yeah. So interesting that two of my selections have the first inverted morph and the first inverted abyss. Read into that what you will.
Yeah.
In November of 2006, November 19th, I went to go see them at the Fox. And I didn't have a ticket to get into that show. And so I went around back and I snuck in, and just in time for the opener, Chemical Warfare Brigade. I was very excited. I ran right to the front. And when I tried to get a drink, I was told that I needed a wristband, and how did I get in here without a wristband? And I was thrown out. And luckily I had a friend with me who was a very smooth talker that I don't really know how he did it. He kind of was just like, let's look at this guy's ID. He's from DC. Like, he wouldn't have come here without a ticket. You probably just missed him when he walked in. And he sweet talked me back in. So I was very relieved, because it ended up being at that point my favorite show that I had ever seen. I remember feeling like this. I was like, Alan he's a biscuit. Like, this is it. Like, this is a great show, and I'm stoked that he's here. And there's a lot of really wonderful moments from that show. But the Cyclone in particular, and I hadn't listened to it in a really, really long time. But I talked about it with Cam on the other podcast, and I was just like, I gotta, because I used to listen to it in the car all the time. And I don't know if it was just because I listened to it so much that it was just ingrained and I knew every note, or if it's really just that good. But there's this lick that Barber does, and I think it starts at the 542 mark, and it's this motif, and he just kind of does it the whole time, and he had never done it before, and he had never done it again. And I think about it all the time. And, even when they play Cyclone, that lick has never been played again to my knowledge, but I think about it. Every time I hear Cyclone, I still think about my favorite Cyclone. And
shall we have a listen to a little snippet?
Yeah, okay, let's do it. And then he repeats that motif over and over and over, and it's the best thing ever.
There you go.
Like it almost sounds like it's supposed to be part of the song that's just always there. It really takes me back right to that night. Okay, I remember where I was standing. This whole night, it was just full of all of these fun motifs and like licks from songs that were played in songs where they weren't supposed to be. Like
Yes.
the little songs of joy lick at the beat, which I guess because you started later on in the song. So there's like 3 little songs of joy licks, like like just, and
Yes.
it's so easy to miss because it's out of context. And I don't even remember that. And like when I listened to it today, I was like, oh, I don't remember that. That's awesome. They didn't even play that song that night. And then he starts playing Magellan during the Waves peak. It's so good.
Yeah. The segment that you highlighted, I'm very grateful that you steered me back to it, because that is exactly the type of Barber playing that got me hooked on this band, that I consider to be the sort of platonic ideal of the Disco Biscuits,
Yes.
where Barber discovers a little figure of riff and you could almost hear him go, oh, that's kind of cool. And he goes with it. He weaves it into and out of the structure of the composition. He quotes it. He might comment on it later. He gets an idea.
Or extrapolate from it, like it's something and then it becomes something else, but it's that structure is still there. And I love that part. I have listened to that in my old Subaru Outback many, many times. And I haven't, that car is long gone.
Well, the jams live on. So, Alex, I want to know when and how you went from being a diehard fan of the Biscuits, who's seeing 40 plus shows during his senior year of college, to being a collaborator and a friend of the band.
So, they are very accessible. I'm going to use the word rock stars. They're accessible as can be, and it's known. If you send Mark a message on Instagram, like he'll probably respond to it because he cares to. And they foster a really friendly environment where people feel welcome and it's easy to kind of talk to them and get to know them. Like they'll hang out with you after the show. So I got to know them on a surface level, just a few years into seeing them. But once I started shooting their webcast, I was, on the other side of the rail and working in a professional capacity. And that's kind of when my relationship with them evolved. As far as to like get right to your question, several years ago in Minnesota, I was ordained as a minister, and I married Drew Grancelli, longtime management of the Disco Biscuits. He and his wife Sienna. And I'm going to pat myself on the back here and say I knocked it out of the fucking park. And after the ceremony, I was walking to go to get the hors d'oeuvres, as one does. And John came up to me and he goes, "Hey, you know how after a biscuit show you come up to me and tell me what a good job I did?" I said, "Yes, I do." He goes, "This is me doing that to you. That was the best wedding ceremony I've ever seen ever. You killed it."
Wow. And I can say for a fact, John was not blowing smoke, because many years later, when it came time for John to be married, who was it who was up there at the altar with him and Lisa? None other than Bud R. Cup.
Was I, and I talked about that in the ceremony. Little did I know that it was an audition. So when I got married in Las Vegas, it was during it was the year that Fish did the Sci-Fi Soldier and the Biscuits played. Lizzie and I got married, and after the ceremony, I went to the show, and John lamented the fact that he had not been invited to the wedding. They were rehearsing all day. They wouldn't have been able to come anyway, which I pointed out to him. He said, "Yeah, but you could have invited us." So, and he's right. I should have. But he said, "I bet you said some really great stuff. Like, I bet your vows were cool." I was like, "Yeah, I did." And then I, kind of saw the wheels turning in his head. He's like, "Hey, you're a good writer. Like, do you have any writing samples you want to send me?" And I said, "Yeah, I definitely do." He goes, "If I sent you some music, like, would you be into writing some lyrics?" And I said, "Yes, I absolutely would." So I sent him a poem of mine, like, just right then and there. Well, no, I texted it to him like later that night. But I sent him this, and I've written a lot of poetry over the years. I started writing poetry in like 2011. I had just gotten out of this like 5-year relationship, and I wanted to do something creative. And I think that here's something. I'm just going to sidetrack for a second.
Please.
Anyone who's listening, like, if you're thinking about doing anything creative, please just do it. Like, we consume and consume and consume so much. You need output to balance, and you will feel so good about it if you do it. I promise. Whether it's just like a doodle on a piece of paper, or like a 2, 3, 4 line poem, or a picture, or whatever, just do it, please, and do something every day, because the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I'm so passionate about just people having a creative outlet. Okay, now we can get back. So I started writing these poems when I broke up with this girl, and I surprised myself at how much I felt like I had a knack for it. And they weren't like aimless, like breakup poetry or anything. Like they were funny. Like I had a niche. They were like kind of pervy and kind of funny. Like Shel Silverstein-y kind of. I was
going to say Shel Silverstein sounds like what you're referring to.
Right. And my goal was to write a poem every single day for as long as I could without missing a day. And I'm going to make myself a WordPress blog. And I started writing these, it's like this like pervy, funny poetry. And there's some that are okay, because it's a numbers game, if you're doing it every day. And there's some that I was like, I really, really impressed myself. So I sent John one that I thought was pretty good. And I can read it to you if you want. But
I would love that.
It's not as funny as some of the other ones, and he was like, "I like this, but I don't think I could read this without He's like, "I couldn't sing this without blushing. Like, it's rock and roll, but like, it's like somebody else would have to sing this. Like, I don't think I could do it." And I get it, because it's like, it's a little much, but.
Well, that's what Magner's for. You have Magner sing that song.
And he didn't use it, but he was like, this is great. If this is what you are capable of, then great. We can let's work together.
Well, let's have the Touchdowns All Day debut.
This one is
your first submission, rejected submission for Disco Biscuits lyrics.
I wrote this in 10 years ago. I wrote this in May of 2014. It's called Apples to Orgasms. On a tuffet she lay, as each dwindling ray kissed her muffet like summer's last lover, splayed without care and as perfectly bare as the autumn-blown branches above her. Hand on her thigh, welling up like the eye of a storm calm awaiting ascent. Moans from her mouth sent the birds soaring south for the winter of her sweet content. Like a spider, her fingers crept nimbly inside her and tickled her pink till she'd swoon. At each little diddle, she'd fit like a fiddle, strung tautly yet just out of tune. Pleasure's perennial petals fell gently and settled by the bed of her chasm. With each season that came, so came she, in the same way one might compare apples to orgasms. The joy it would bring her to usher in spring made her flesh and her spirit both swell. Delighted, she found, flowers bloomed from the ground in the spots where her honeydew fell.
I'm shocked that the man who wrote and sings to this day, because her coochie can't stand her hand no more, would have a problem with those words. But that was wonderful.
Thank you.
And I think exemplary of the wordplay that you so clearly enjoy.
Yeah.
Shel Silverstein, an influence, any other poets or songwriters who you found yourself particularly
No, not at all,
by?
really. Not at all. I just started doing it and it was just my own style. I never really was influenced by anybody. So it actually started because I had broken up with this girl in Texas and I moved in with this dude who was an artist, a digital artist. And we had this, half-baked idea to write a children's book. And it was going to each
a children's book of erotica, apparently.
No. Well, so it eventually turned into that, but the premise was that this kid would jump through puddles, and when he was in the real world, it was just a normal story. But when he jumped through the puddles, he went into this world where everything rhymed.
Amazing.
Which I still think is a great idea, and maybe one day I'll do something with it. But so I wrote this poem, which was took place in this rhyming world, and it was all about these this world where everything was this forest where everything was blue. And I wrote it without having any real experience writing any poetry. And I got to the end of it, and I was like, "This is fucking good. How did I where did this come from?" And then I decided I would put that project to the side because I didn't know that I had it. I was like, I need to actually hone my skill before I can do this project. So I'm just going to start writing poems for fun. And then when I feel like I've really got it, I'm going to come back to this project. I never made it back to that project, but
one day.
Yeah. Well, there've been many projects since.
So I'm going to say this was probably circa 2021 that you and John began this conversation about collaboration. That's when
it was 3 years ago. It was if this October, it will be 3 years ago.
Okay. So where do things go from there?
So he wrote this song called Funk Ditty, which, you've discussed on the podcast. And I think it was Alan did the drums, and I think Cloud Chord was on it as well. And John was, he basically told me, he said, I want to write a song. During the pandemic, I kept thinking about change, and I want to write a song about drastic change. And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'm totally in. And so he sent me this funk track, which it was the last thing I expected, because it was this upbeat funk track. And I saw it as a challenge. I love a good challenge because that's how you grow as an artist, is by challenging yourself. And so I said, all right, I'm going to write a song about drastic change to an upbeat funk track, and we'll see how it goes. And I wrote a song about the world ending. And then I sent it to him, and he said, this is great. I love it. And he started, making recordings of himself playing guitar and singing it, but he wasn't getting the timing that I wanted lyrically. So I said, okay, well, I'll just record it. But before I did that, the next day he said, you know what? I changed my mind. Let's make it a love song. And I said, okay. That's cool. That's great. And I remembered that I had read some article. I don't remember if it was a Simpsons writer or a King of the Hill. So it was. Well, it's better for the purposes of this story if it's a Simpsons writer. So we'll just say that. He talked about how his first day on the job, he wrote what he thought was a great joke, and he went and took it to the showrunner. He said, "Check this out." And they're like, "This is fantastic. Like, way to start your first day. Go write 10 more." And the guy goes, "But this is hilarious. Like, we've got a winner right here." And he goes, and they told him, "This is how we do things here. Go write 10 more." And he was a little salty about it at first, but then he said, "You know what? This is the job." And so he wrote 10 more jokes, and he goes, "I don't even remember what the first one was because I wrote so many others that were just better." Yeah. And that's how you have to look at, you can't get too attached to anything you're doing or you're not going to get anywhere. So when he said that, I said, great, you know what? This is another challenge. It's another opportunity to be creative and make something. So cool. Let's do this apocalyptic love song. And I have the first few versions of it. In fact, it was, you played it on that other podcast. So
episode 68, Jamception 2.
It went through a few different drafts before Joey finally took the concept, which is love at the end of the world. The concept of the world is ending, but love persists. And when I explained that to him, he was quite taken with it. And he was so kind and so considerate because he said, "I want to take this concept and make it into something else. I don't want to step on your toes. Is that okay?" And I said to him, "That is extremely thoughtful of you. This song has been in the works for over 3 years now, so I would be so much happier if this concept saw the light of day than it just continued to gather dust. So do whatever you need to do to make it happen." And he did a great job.
Well, let's listen back again to Edge of Forever. We enjoyed it so much the first time. Why not rewind it and give it another spin?
All right.
City sun is going down now. The planet shivers, there's a crack in the core.
I loved to think about the Biscuits doing those vocal harmonies there at the end that you did so nicely with your multi-track recording. Alex, you were so talented. When Joey and I listened to that, we were both blown away. We know that you're a musical guy, a creative guy who tends to excel at the medium that you pick up that day, but you are a really great singer.
Thank you.
When do we get the Alex Mazer solo album is what I want to know.
I don't know. I sang lead on some tracks in my band in high school. If you want to hear like a punk song with me singing lead, I can play you one.
Well, I think that I want to give you the encouragement to whether or not these songs ever see the light of day through a Disco Biscuits collaboration. Think about not only releasing them, but also maybe performing them yourself, because I really love that. And knowing the story behind it and its relationship to In the End We Have Forever. It's such a great little bit of Biscuits history and trivia.
It's such a cool evolution.
And an illustration of the creative, collaborative process. You have been involved in this process in so many different ways. Even though one of your original compositions has not yet made it to stage, your fingerprints are all over so many of the songs recently. Yeah,
Falling was another one. And that song made a big splash. I was really, really stoked about that one.
Well, tell me a little bit about your involvement with Falling, because I always knew Falling to be a part of the Very Moon musical theater project that Barber and Magner were working on with Nicholas Schmidl. When you said earlier that you had a background as a musical theater kid, or someone who at least loved musical theater growing up.
I definitely was.
I started to make the connections, but how were you involved in Falling?
So the Very Moon musical was being written, and they are adding new songs to the Hot Air Balloon rock opera, which is so cool because it's such a rich mythology that means so much to so many people who are Disco Biscuits fans, for over 2 decades. And I had just seen Fish at the Greek, and Lizzie and I were driving to LA to go see her parents, and John texted me and said that he wanted to write a song that took place after Coronado escaped from prison, after Bizarre Escape, but before. It's basically about him jumping off the cliff, and him getting the idea for the balloon. And so, immediately I knew what I wanted to do. As soon as I got that text, it's all I could think about. Just being a part of that mythology was the coolest thing, the coolest opportunity ever to me as a fan. And so I didn't even think about it for a long time. I just said, what if he's in prison and he's watching people get burned at the stake, and then he sees how their ashes fly into the air, and then that's how he gets the idea for the balloon, because heat distributing things. And we got to Lizzie's parents' house, and I said, excuse me, I have to go write something. And I went into the bedroom and opened the computer, and I didn't come out till I had written the first draft. And John had sent me music too. So he sent me music, and I listened to it, and it happened so fast. I knew the story that I wanted to tell, and there were several back and forth drafts. So the first one is quite different than where we ended. But I had so much fun doing it, and it just poured out. And when I sent the first draft of the lyrics to John, I could tell he was super jazzed about it too. He was typing in all caps with exclamation marks. He was excited, and in turn that made me so excited.
Well, I have here an early demo that you were so kind as to share of you performing some of the lyrics that you had written.
Right. Because again, I had to show him what I wanted the vocal rhythm to be.
Yes. Well, I'm going to play that for us now.
Swan dive from the mountain mountainside. Screaming winds bring water to my eyes. Vision blurs and my mouth is dry. Not a sound betrays me as I cry through my iron window pane. I used to watch the souls condemned to burn. In a way I envy them, each released in turn into the night sky. Ashes dance like angels in the sky, soaring softly free under the moonlight. Floating they escape into the night. I fall from the sky, imploring the aura, please send me a sign. Guided by light, lifted by fire, propelled by the flames that explode from the pyre. I take off tonight. Heaven's heaving rapidly, whispers in my brain begin to start. Ain't nobody gonna save me, save for me, I feel it in my heart. Tail spinning in a corkscrew, the sea comes up to meet me and I smile, now I know just what to do. I found my sign, I fly into the night sky. Ashes dance like angels in the sky, soaring softly free under the moonlight. Floating they escape into the night. I fly through the sky, reaching for each passing star that flies by. Lifted by love, guided by fire, propelled by the flames that explode from the pyre. I take off tonight.
Wow. Were you working with any sort of lyrical guidance apart from the themes that John asked you to address within the song?
So he what he likes to do is just kind of like hum or sing like a word salad type of stuff over a track. So I knew like a basic melody that he wanted, but every once in a while he'd throw in a real word. And sometimes when he did that, I would use that word, but often I would just use whatever word I wanted to, but sometimes I would use it as a guideline. This was magic. Like he sent me the music and I knew the story I wanted to tell and I sent it. It happened so fast. Like, I know I said that already, but like, it poured out of me and I sent it right back. And I think I like sent it back to him like much sooner than he expected me to.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows that song knows that like that isn't how that song goes now, because we went back and forth a few times and Nick Schmidl also like had a lot of input as well. So where we eventually arrived was the song that we have now. But the swan dive off the mountainside, John was so excited about that opening line. He was just like right off the bat, he's like, this, like wherever it goes from here, like we're definitely keeping that. So
nice.
And when I went to go see the Very Moon stage production, and I went backstage and he introduced me to all the actors. He goes, "This is the swan dive off the mountainside guy."
Oh, wow.
They're like, "Oh yeah, John showed us your video," and I was like, "Oh, thanks." But
you also shared an early demo that I guess incorporated some of your guidance, but with John performing. Is that what we have here?
Uh-huh.
Anything else you want to say to set this part up?
No, and as I was texting with you earlier today, I think that the song turned out great. You have first drafts so that they are first drafts, so that you have a skeleton to get to where you're going. The only line that I really wish had made it in was imploring Leora to send me a sign, because that has such a nice inside rhyme to it, like imploring Leora. It's so good, and I wanted to have her name in it to really make it feel like it was part of the original story. But you can't get too attached to stuff.
Well, here it is, an early demo of Falling.
Swan dive from the mountainside, screaming winds bring water to my eyes. Vision blurs and my mouth is dry. Not a sound betray me as I cry through the iron window pane. I used to watch the souls condemned to burn in a way I envied them. Each released in turn to the outside, staring out like angels in the night sky, soaring in the freedom of the moonlight. Floating in
Now, are we hearing John doing the falsetto accompaniment there?
I think so. I think it's just an effect on his voice.
Yes. It's very, very interesting to hear the evolution of a song from an idea,
it's so fun. Yeah.
a prompt, a challenge through these different iterations and to see different creative influences, yours, Aaron's, John's, Nicholas's, all coalesce together. Any updates on the status of The Very Moon? There has been so much else going on right now that we haven't heard much about the project lately. Are you still involved?
I'm as involved as they want me to be. Like I'm here. Like if you want me to be involved, I'm down. I love doing it. So,
well, one last aspect of the Disco Biscuits contemporary output that I want to highlight your involvement with is, of course, Revolution in Motion. The first I heard that you had been involved with songwriting was that Joey explained to me that you had contributed some key segments to Plan of Attack.
Yeah.
The first of John and Joey's collaborations, and a song that has undergone a lot of different stages in its own evolution. If I understand this correctly, you contributed the opening verse.
Yes.
The Can You Hear Us Now as the lights come slowly into focus. Mm-hmm. How did you become involved in contributing to that song and the space opera more generally?
When we were in New Orleans, and I think they had debuted Space Taxi at the time. That was about 3 years ago. John and I he was very jazzed about like what, Funk Diddy, the song that Funk Diddy was to me is called Edge of Forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were kind of like singing it outside of the venue. Like we had like the lyrics pulled up on a Google Doc and we were singing it. And Joey was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Oh, it's a song that we're writing together. It's so cool." He was stoked about it. And Joey was like, "Oh, I didn't know you guys were doing that. Like, does Alex know about like what we're doing?" He's like, "Oh no, play him Shocked." And so he played me Shocked. And basically like Joey was very excited to be able to talk about it with somebody else.
Yeah.
So he divulged and kind of clued me in on the whole thing. And when he knew that I was also collaborating with John, I think he felt comfortable coming to me for, I had John's trust. So I had Joey's trust as well. And with Another Plan of Attack, he was stuck on the first verse. And so he said, "Hey, you want to write a verse?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, why don't you send it to me?" He goes, "Well, why don't we just do it on the phone right now?" And so he just called me right then and there. And we were on the phone for like 3 hours. And a lot of it was just him explaining the rock opera to me. And maybe 45 minutes of it was like us just like coming up with this verse together on the spot. And I've never written like that really collaboratively. I've maybe written something and sent it to someone and they send it back, but we were in real time writing it together, which was a new experience for me and one that I really enjoyed. And I think it was a good learning experience to learn how to write in that kind of situation, because Joey was like, "No, I want to do this right now. Like, let's do it right now." And his enthusiasm really lit a fire under my ass. I was like, "Okay, then we're doing this right now." And then we would just like kind of shoot ideas back and forth. And I would ask him like, "What is happening in this scene? Like, what do you want to convey? What is happening in the narrative that it's important for the listener to understand so that we get a good picture of what's happening in this scene with as few words as possible?" And that opening line, "Do you hear my voice as the lights come slowly into focus?" Like, I was just thinking like, when somebody wakes up from a coma, the lights are coming slowly into focus. People are asking if they can hear them. So that first line like also came out right away, and the other ones went through a few iterations. And when we finally came up with something, we sent it to John, and he was like, "This is great, but I don't like the way it sings. So come up," which is something that I'd never had to think about ever before. Writing poetry, you just want to use like the most flowery prose you can. Like I like alliteration and words that have lots of syllables, and similar sounds within the same sentence, whereas that's not necessarily how a singer wants their lyrics to read, because it can be tricky to sing something like that. So I've never written with that in mind. So that was a really cool learning experience as well. And it eventually got where it needed to be. But, once we did that together, it was a really cool bonding experience for Joey and I, because we created something that we were both really excited about together. And I remember the first time that they played it, we were up front, like hugging each other, jumping up and down. We're like, this is our song. This is our song. It's really, really special to hear words that you have written come out of a band that you respect and admire creatively, the way that I respect and admire these guys creatively.
Yeah. And Joey is a very generous collaborator. My small version of that experience was last year in Pine Creek. On the first night, we were all backstage. You were there. And they were working on Photograph. And they were stuck on the bridge. And they were basically like going through a rhyming dictionary sort of situation, trying to replace a line that John didn't like. And I said something like, how about see a window and I'll take it, blow the whole thing open, or something like that. And then Joey was like, yeah, that's it. And every time Photograph is being played in the venue, when they get to that line, Joey always turns and looks at me and sings it out loud and points to me and basically like thanks me for helping. I just like, I took the words that were already there and I maybe changed one or two of them, but that kind of process that you could get stuck on something and it just takes someone saying, oh, what if you switch this with that? And suddenly
something that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of. And that's wonderful. He's so gracious. He just wants the finished product to be the best it can be. And he's not like, this needs to be my way. I'm attached to this, so it has to be this way. He is very much of the mindset that this just needs to be the best it can be. And I just work here.
So I want to clarify for posterity's sake. I know that the first demo that Joey had played for me just began with the chorus. You added the first verse. Can you hear us now as the lights come slowly into focus? You were lost. Now we find ourselves above a whole new world. Clear of mind, one chance, an option for consideration. Now at hand lies our moment. So golden, so beautiful.
Yeah. And I wasn't even that, like that last line, now at hand lies our moment. So golden, so beautiful. Like I kind of wrote that almost as a placeholder. Like I was just like, this fits. Like I'm going to give him this until I think of something better. But John was like, I love that line. And so that was the line that it was.
Did you also write the second verse, which is the partner or corollary of that?
No, that one was already written at the time.
Okay. So what I wanted to hone in on is verse 2, which I take it existed prior to your involvement. Can you hear them now? In the streets they group and sing your praises. You became exactly what they were always hoping for. On this night of dance, the people drink in jubilation. We strike first and hit them when they're at their most vulnerable. You took this back to the moment as a sort of device within the context of the song, where you not only created symmetry between the multiple parts of this, and this is a very complicated song, it has an intro, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, another verse, chorus, bridge, outro. But you built that structure there where not only did you create more symmetry within this construction, but for some reason, I've always loved, can you hear us now? And then can you hear them now?
And can you hear us now? Yeah.
You're very much, come back to us. We are in this present moment. But ultimately what they say is, and think about what your future can be. Think about what we could achieve. And of course, it's a nefarious plot. They want to capture and enslave the earth. But there is something really beautiful from a storytelling standpoint and from a poetry standpoint, and how you've taken a verse that existed and positioned a very similarly structured verse at the start of the song where you change the tense, you change it from third person to second person plural. You create this sort of framing device around the entire song that also, I think, has this wonderful preview. I don't think that this existed at the time. Clear of mind, one chance, an option for consideration. Of course, later on, the Biscuits themselves have one chance to save the world. But
and I don't remember where that line came
chance.
from. Like the one option for consideration, that one chance, one option for consideration. That I think was Joey. I think, but it's also like, it's hard to remember exactly. But I didn't make that connection until you just pointed it out.
Well, that's some of the best things that happen in art are the things that we didn't even know were happening. The last thing I'll say that you were involved in with this project was the animated mini movies.
Oh, yeah.
I know that you were giving notes, that you were helping story development. Anything else that you were involved in that process when the chapters of the rock opera, space opera were being released and those animations were being produced? I know that you were part of the mix there.
Yeah. We were basically writing the script together. Like Joey and Aaron were doing it, and then Aaron wanted to pass it off to me, and I think Joey was kind of getting frustrated with it. And so I wrote a script, and this was happening like right before New Year's. So it was a very chaotic time because I was in New York vending at Fish and then went to Biscuits to go do camera on stage. So my memory on this is a little bit hazy because it was very chaotic and I was juggling a lot of different balls at the time. But I just know that I wrote a script and basically consulted on all the other ones. Like I was part of the email train, but it was me and Aaron and Joey and 1111 and whatever what was the name of the company that did it?
Blunt Action,
right? Blunt Action. So I don't I wish I could tell you more about that, but it's like I can't remember.
Well, one final aspect of your involvement with the Biscuits that I think not a lot of people know about, but that I've always appreciated, and that has to do with their stage costuming. Now, I know you are a big Bowie fan. I know that you value self-expression through clothing. You're a clothing designer yourself. You've dressed rock stars from John Barber to Jay Lane. But one thing that I've always felt is that while jam bands certainly have been trendsetters in terms of live concert visuals, the Joshua Light Show, Candace Brightman, obviously Chris Kuroda, Johnny R. Good, R.I.P., they've typically dressed like schmucks. With the exception of the nudie suits for the Dead in the early 70s, the Dead dressed like slobs. Fish dressed for the most part like slobs with some exceptions.
Until pretty recently.
Flair. Well, now, of course,
now they have personal stylists.
They have stylists, and Mike and Trey would not step on stage in a pair of shoes that weren't at least $1,000. But the Biscuits have, Barber comes on stage in bathrobes, pajamas. Comfort is the top priority. But Barber's coveralls have always been a huge part of how he likes to show up on stage. Last fall, we're all getting ready for Barber's bachelor party, and you send out the word that you are going to get the entire groom's party some custom dyed jumpsuits. We don't know what we're going to do with these. We don't know what, is it going to be we go out on the town wearing the jumpsuits? Is it going to be we wear them just hanging out one night? But you get these incredible red custom dyed corner 12 jumpsuits, and we all put them on and surprise Barber at the bachelor party as Danger Zone, Highway to the Danger Zone from the Top Gun soundtrack plays. It's a great moment. We all take pictures. We're all loving it. We're feeling a tremendous sense of unity and camaraderie. But I never think that we're going to see those jumpsuits again. And shortly thereafter, Biscoland, I see the pictures and the band is wearing the jumpsuits that you designed. And I think this is another avenue for Mazur's self-expression, his creativity, costuming, dressing this band. And since then, of course, we've had the Navy jumpsuits that show corner 12s, unique dyeing style off even more vividly. But what
well, that was a fun experiment for him as well, just because, you know, he had never done anything like that before. And he and I were vending at this event in El Segundo together. And I said, hey, how would you feel about an influencer marketing opportunity?
Amazing.
And so, you know, John is coverall jumpsuit forward. And I think he lost his red one. And I just had one of those ideas that can remain hypothetical unless you're the kind of person that doesn't let your ideas remain hypothetical. It would have been so easy not to do it. And it was a pain in the ass because I had to order a bunch of them and get everyone's sizes and see how they were sized. Like I returned a bunch. And then I had to get them over to him to dye. And he had never done that before. So this was, you know, a learning experience for him too. And I think they turned out great. And I think that the next batch turned out even better because he had a good idea of how to do it. But he and I have since collaborated a bunch of times. He's been doing a lot of dyes for me, and he's so talented. I love what he does. We've done 4 or 5 batches. Like we usually do like between 9 and 12 shirts, and I'll be vending at Dick's for Fish Labor Day weekend, everybody. So get out there, and there'll be a new batch of corner 12 dyes.
Amazing. Any further future plans to outfit the biscuits in cool stage garb?
You know, there are no immediate plans, but I am certainly open to it. That also felt really cool, like seeing them up there at because I was on the stage at Biscoland too. It was freezing. I was wearing like a sweatshirt and a raincoat, and I couldn't feel my fingers. It was so cold. But I was up there looking at them in those suits that I was responsible for. That was a cool feeling. And they look good.
That's great. They looked very good. And I think the fact that the band puts them on for special performances, I think there's something to be said about that.
They're a team, just like a team has a uniform. And I think when you're a team wearing a uniform, you perform like a team wearing a uniform.
Yes. Love it. Well, Alex, as a way of wrapping up our conversation, you have achieved so much creatively in the last few years through not only New Springfield Boogie, but also your partnership and friendship and creative collaboration with Joey and John and the entire Biscuits organization. So looking ahead, what creative goals are there still out there for you that you haven't yet accomplished or even started to work on?
Great question. I think it would be very, very cool to make vinyl toys. I have not ever done that, but I think a lot of and this isn't really Biscuits related. I guess it could be, but I'm just thinking New Springfield Boogie. A lot of my designs, I think, would translate very well into vinyl toys, and that, you know, like The Dead, like The Simpsons, there is a fanfare and collector culture around vinyl toys as well. So that is somewhere off in the distant future goal of mine. I'd love to, and you know, with regard to everything else, I would love to keep collaborating. Like I'm here, I'm happy to do it. Like it's so much fun for me. It's so fulfilling for me. And I look forward to John sent me a song actually, just like a week ago. And I told him, I'm like, listen, like I can't even look at this until after the Dead residency. So this isn't going to be something I turn around fast, but I'm glad you reminded me. I need to look at that.
Okay. Final question, Alex. What do we need to do to get some New Springfield Boogie Biscuits merch?
I'm not opposed. but I've been asked that question before, to which my snide answer was Bisco Stew doesn't advertise. But, I'm a bootlegger, I can't like bootleg my friend's merch. So,
yes,
but maybe we could work out something official,
I mean,
what makes it challenging is that I am infringing on other intellectual properties and I don't want to bring them into that mess.
Yes, I see.
There's a question mark there, but the desire is also there.
Well, sign me up for a large Mark Brownstein, Homer Simpson,
you betcha,
crossover mashup shirt.
Yeah. Did you see the one that he was wearing in the video we did together?
Yes, I did. Yes.
I think
he was an excellent merchandise model for you.
He was. I think that is the one that he was wearing is my favorite one that Corner 12 has done. I think he did such a good job on that one. I was happy to see Mark wearing it.
Yeah. Corner 12 is incredibly
talented.
He's
so good.
I'm going to let Alex go, and I'm going to thank Alex for not only joining us here on the podcast, but for everything he does to keep the creative juices of our community flowing, for all the great art, music, lyrics that he has contributed, and for just being a generally wonderful presence on the scene who always has a wonderful smile, who's always enjoying the music, and who's always putting off a very inclusive, welcoming energy. So, Alex, thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this, because I love this podcast, and you're doing such a wonderful job as a host. You are a natural host, and it has been a pleasure to be on this show.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I'm going to play us out here with a special performance of Morph Dusseldorf from March 13th, 2024, Alex Mazur's birthday, featuring a sample of one of his favorite artists, Dolly Parton.
Jolene, 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 please don't take him just because you can. Jolene, 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 please don't take him just because you
Touchdowns All Day is an Osiris Media production. This episode was written, produced, and edited by me, Max Dawson, and was mixed and mastered by Matt Dwyer. Check us out on the web at www.touchdownsallday.com and use the hashtag touchdownsallday on all social platforms. You can connect with John at Barber Shreds, and I'm at FY Maxwell on X and Instagram. This and every episode of Touchdowns All Day wouldn't be possible without the contributions of many men and women, including the Disco Biscuits Road Crew, Ben, Nick, Brian, Dane, Amin, Herm, Tara, the band, Mark, Aaron, Alan, and John, the management, Ben Baruch and Andrew Kaplan at 1111, the Touchdowns All Day Advisory Committee, that's Andy Bazzani and Mike Walsh at the Biscuits Internet Project, Russ Tabes, Dave Cook, Scott McClintock, Think Tank Dubs, Rich Steele, and Ian Armstrong. my friends Joey Friedman and Steve Martocci. And extra special thanks, as always, to Lisa Gutwillig, Deb Brownstein, Angelica Magner, Sandra O'Quinn, Andrea Rivers, and Avery McMahon. On behalf of John Barber, Alex Mazer, and the entire Touchdowns All Day family, this is Max Dawson saying see you next time.
Mass communicate. Mass communicate. Mass communicate.
Osiris.